When it comes to Disney entertainment nostalgia, there's quite a few subjects to choose from. Whether it's the movies you grew up watching, the toys you played with, or the games you obsessed over, Disney's influence on fond memories of the past truly has no limits. However, another form of Disney-centric nostalgia were their television shows, and more specifically the Disney Channel. It first went live almost 4 decades ago, and in that time has gone through a lot of changes, and has also hosted some pretty bizarre content. So don't touch that dial, or play button, and let's explore the rise and fall of the original Disney Channel. The story begins on April 18, 1983, when the Disney Channel made its official debut on cable television. But to fully understand and appreciate what led to this monumental occasion, let's rewind a bit to the very beginning.
Dinosaurs appeared some 220 million years ago and roamed the Earth until about 65 million years ago.
No, I meant the beginning of cable TV itself, as it's actually a major part of the channel's overall history. Now, when telling the story of how this once revolutionary TV service came to be, there's more than one starting place in its history. For instance, it technically began with the first television transmissions ever in the 1920s, which were obviously quite crude and very primitive. One could also begin the story of cable TV in the 1930s, with the first television broadcast to the public. This is also when TV was evolving from an experimental new form of technology into a viable source of entertainment, sports, and news coverage. But as an effort to get to the creation of the Disney Channel a bit sooner, let's jump to 1948 with NBC's Texaco Star Theater.
How do you like this? Isn't it wonderful? What you gotta go through for a lousy $15,000 a week, isn't it murder?
Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the Disney Channel itself, but it was the first true television hit that led to the innovation of cable TV. You see, when the show first debuted, only 2% of Americans even had a television set, as by and large they were seen as an expensive fad that would soon fade away. But Texaco Star Theater was a huge success, and became the first must-see TV show, causing televisions to go from a device of luxury to a must-have household item. Likewise, the show also set fire to network television production, and within a matter of years, the industry was brimming with all kinds of addicting sitcoms, variety shows, and dramas. But with the surge in popularity for this new form of home entertainment, there was also a growing problem. It was more or less reliant on families living near a TV station to even receive a show signal. So if you lived outside of a major city, and especially within mountainous regions or places with bad weather, you'd often have terrible signal strength or no signal at all. Enter cable TV, in which massive antennas were built to rise above these mountain ranges, receive the signals from faraway broadcast stations, and by way of cables, transmit the signal into your home. Now, to be clear, cable TV did require a pretty hefty investment for the average American household. In fact, the initial installation fee was usually around $150, or just over $1,500 today, and monthly charges were about $5 a month, or $55 a month today. Regardless of the price, cable television instantly took off, and despite a few rough years in the 60s due to some FCC regulations that were eventually overturned, in the 1970s the cable business was once again booming. But the benefits of cable TV started to appeal to those in major cities as well, so this pay TV service saw a massive expansion beyond its original intention. But for some, this wasn't a good thing.
Monsters do have their place. In the zoo, in your nightmares, in the deep, in your favorite horror movies, but not in your living room, on your TV. Pay TV and cable TV companies are seeking the right to charge you for the very programs you now get free. If you want to stop pay TV and save free television, sign the petition in the lobby of this theater.
Most of the concern with cable TV was a general fear of being forced to pay for television shows that were normally free. There was also the fear of paying for televised sports events, concerts, or even worse, the possibility of movie skipping theaters and going straight to this newfangled pay TV service, thus putting movie theaters out of business. Wow, talk about the past repeating itself. Enter a man by the name of Charles Dolan, who in a sense realized these fears with the creation of HBO, and was more or less the true beginning of the Disney Channel. You see, up until this point, cable TV was purchased as a single package, in which you'd pay a monthly fee to access a wide variety of channels and networks. But his idea was to create a movie and sports premium cable TV channel, one that you had to pay for on top of the cost for basic cable. It would also be commercial-free, and unlike television networks, there would be no censorship or edits made to its content. The cost? $6.50 a month, or just under $45 a month today. Now initially this was met with a lot of skepticism, as the idea of customers paying for a single channel on top of the others they were paying for seemed a bit far-fetched. Nevertheless, despite its availability in just 4 states, HBO was quite the initial success, amassing around 100,000 subscribers in just a few short months. With the implementation of satellite technology a few years later, HBO then became available to the entire country, and subscribers increased dramatically. Of course, it wasn't long before other companies took notice and wanted to cash in, resulting in a host of new pay TV channels and essentially a brand new industry. This is when Disney officially enters the story, and it all has to do with a guy named James Jamiro. You see, this was Walt Disney's telecommunications director, and he felt it was about time for Disney to also join this bustling new market. One of the reasons had to do with the company's extensive backlog of literal decades worth of content, which at this point was going virtually unused and definitely underutilized. Going even further, he also noticed that family content was largely absent from these new pay TV channels, which gave Disney a pretty easy in. He also felt that Disney could be the solution to an ever-growing complaint from parents and religious groups that there was far too much sex and violence on television. So in May of 1977, James Jamiro pitched the Disney Channel to company executives, but unfortunately the answer was no. The reason for this was purely financial, as at the time Disney was also pouring a ton of resources in Epcot Center. So while they believed it was a good idea, it just wasn't good timing to begin a brand new television service. Besides, Disney was already struggling with the one television venture they did have, The Wonderful World of Disney on NBC.
The Wonderful World of Disney, part of your family for 25 years.
Now it's pretty common knowledge, but for a brief recap and summary, Walt Disney's Disneyland debuted on network TV in 1954. Initially, the show was simply a way to finance the park and drum up interest, but even after the park opened, it remained a huge hit with audiences. Within a matter of years, the show then evolved into Walt Disney Presents, and in 1961, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. For over a decade, the show was hosted by Walt Disney himself, and was one of the most valuable ties to the public in terms of promoting the Disney brand. The series was even able to survive the tragic passing of its beloved host in 1966, although obviously Walt Disney's presence was sorely missed.
That's your cue, fellows. Hear me? Sing!
A few years later, the show underwent some minor rebranding to account for his absence, but still thrived in television ratings well into the early 70s. However, this was far from the case with the mid to late 70s, as by 1977, the show had gone from placing within the top 10 consistently across all networks to placing at number 53. Most of the blame had to do with a severe lack of new and original content, as with the slew of Disney's live-action box office duds, the budget for this was minimized. So the show began to heavily rely on older live-action films, reruns of older live-action shows, and older compilations of Disney cartoons. Also, keep in mind that aside from Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo, even at this point the company still refused to air the other titles from Disney's animated feature film canon. So with the lackluster ratings for Disney's network show, combined with the ever-ballooning budget for Epcot, this meant any sort of new Disney Channel was off the table, at least for the time being. Instead, Disney made a deal with HBO to license a handful of feature films and animated shorts, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs live on stage.
And this is Dopey. He don't talk none.
Oh, you mean he can't talk?
He don't know. He never tried.
For the next 5 years or so, James Jamiro was incredibly persistent about his Disney Channel idea, and pitched to executives every chance he could get. But his perseverance did eventually pay off, as in the early 80s, Disney finally began to seriously consider turning his idea into a reality. Part of what turned the tide in his favor was the Disney Network Anthology series, as in 1981 it was actually cancelled by NBC due to its poor ratings and viewership. The show was then picked up by CBS and given a major overhaul, becoming simply Walt Disney. Period. But despite the fancy new look and home on a different TV network, the show continued to struggle in ratings even worse than it did before. So this made the prospect of more or less starting from scratch with a whole new TV platform a lot more appealing. Another factor was the huge success of Epcot Center, as it freed up the company's financial resources for another venture. Plus, there was also the still controversial issue among parents about too much sex and violence on television, and Disney realized they could offer a solution to the problem. And of course, profit off it. So at long last, in 1982, James Jamiro was officially given the green light for the Disney Channel. But it wasn't going to be cheap. First, Disney had to acquire transponder space on the Hughes Communications Galaxy 1 satellite, which wound up costing $11 million. Then there were the expenses of developing new and original content, which wound up costing a further $20 million. So all told, just to get the Disney Channel up and running with enough content, the initial investment rose to $45 million, or $120 million today. As far as what would make up the channel's content, it was to be 1/3 existing Disney programming, 1/3 original Disney programming, and 1/3 outside programming. Now, most of these creative and financial decisions were pretty routine, but there was one aspect of the channel's creation that was incredibly divisive: whether or not to officially cancel the Walt Disney Network anthology series. It was a notion put forward by then Disney executive Card Walker and President Ron Miller, as given the show's poor ratings and viewership, they felt it was a waste of financial resources to keep it up and running. The other reason was to avoid unnecessary competition with the Disney Channel, as they both had a fear the series would cannibalize the new Disney Pay TV service. But other executives were strongly against canceling the show, one of which was Dick Nunis, who was in charge of the Disney theme parks. For one, he was against ending the legacy of a show that was brought to life by Walt Disney himself, a show that quite literally funded Disneyland, and in turn Walt Disney World. It was also the fact that in some ways, due to the company's policy about minimal advertising of the Disney parks, the Disney Anthology series was one of the company's few connections to the public, so the show was basically free publicity. Nevertheless, in 1983, the decision was made to cancel the series once and for all, just shy of its 30th year anniversary. Instead, all bets were placed on the Disney Channel, and the anticipation for this squeaky clean family television alternative was immense.
The excitement is building as the countdown begins. On April 18th, the name synonymous with animation, family films, and theme parks will test its philosophy in a new arena: cable television. The Disney Channel goes on the air.
When we go on the air with the Disney Channel, we'll have 13 new series for the channel exclusively that represent a $45 million expenditure. That is the highest level of new expenditure of money for a pay television service in history.
The Disney Channel officially launched on April 18, 1983, and for the cost of around $10 a month, kids and adults could enjoy 16 hours a day of family-friendly programming, from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. But what kind of content did the channel originally offer, I hear you asking? Well, let's dive into that a bit. On the animated side of things, there was Good Morning Mickey, which was basically a show consisting of classic Disney animated shorts. There was also Masterpiece Theater, a show which also featured classic Disney animated shorts. The difference was a sort of behind-the-scenes commentary before and after each segment, and was hosted by journalist and writer George Plimpton. But the channel was much more than a bunch of old Disney cartoons, as its live-action content was also a major selling point. One of these was a show called Mousercise.
Get into shape with Mickey, Minnie, and the whole Disney gang. It's a fun-filled family workout. Plus, timely tips on health and nutrition for everyone.
Don't you know that sugar promotes tooth decay?
This Disney original was a glorious hybrid of classic Disney characters and exercise, and was basically the epitome of all things good and cringe of the 1980s. There was also You and Me Kid, an education program dedicated to the building of interactive skills between parents and their children. At least, that's the official description. Another live-action Disney program is actually a bit of a mystery, a show by the name of Dreamfinders.
On the sound stages of Dreamfinders, imagination is the call to arms. Fantasy becomes reality, as the talented team of artists and technicians eagerly answers the call. Journey through the world of imagination in Dreamfinders.
It was loosely based off the Epcot Center attraction Journey into Imagination, specifically the characters of Dreamfinder in the figment of his imagination, Figment. But while the show was heavily advertised as part of the Disney Channel's original lineup, and even appeared briefly in promos, it was mysteriously cancelled shortly after the channel's launch. It's believed 1 to 3 episodes were at least partially filmed, although rumors persist of a complete episode airing on the channel at least once. That said, as far as shows that did air for sure, there was also the Walt Disney Studios Showcase. This series gave audiences a glimpse behind the making of Disney's upcoming feature films and shorts, especially the ones with innovative and experimental film techniques. There was also DTV, which was essentially a mashup of Disney shorts with a wide variety of past and present top-charting hits. The final Disney character-centric show worth a mention was Welcome to Pooh Corner, which was just as adorable then as it is now, but with a slight hint of discomfort.
And don't forget, there are good strangers and bad strangers. And some strangers, the bad ones, want to hurt kids.
As far as the Disney content aimed at teens and parents, there were plenty of reruns of classic live-action shows such as Zorro, Davy Crockett, and the Mickey Mouse Club. There was also a wide assortment of non-Disney content, such as the exhilarating Hot Yachts and Cold Water, The K starring James Earl Jones, The Secret Life of Plants with the music of Stevie Wonder, and Contraption, a game show for kids. Yeah, the channel's non-Disney content was pretty lackluster, but more on that later. Another major draw to Disney's new television service were premieres of their live-action films, with newer releases such as Tron and older movies like Mary Poppins. Finally, there was Disney's first ever made-for-TV movie called Tiger Town, which was part of what was then called Disney Channel Premiere Films. But alas, aside from Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo, once again the rest of Disney's animated feature film canon was nowhere to be found. Okay, now that we've covered the channel's first year or so of content, let's continue its history and evolution.
The Disney Channel wishes you a wonderful tomorrow. And remember, you always have a place to turn to. Your family place. The Disney Channel. And now, good night.
Now, when talking about the early history of the Disney Channel, a lot of sources claim it was an immediate success. And it was. Kind of. You see, the initial 6 months were actually a significant loss for the company. $28 million in fact, with the loss of another $35 million by the end of 1984. So while the situation does sound bad, it was far from unexpected, as given the channel's massive startup costs, Disney actually planned for this initial loss. It was even estimated from Disney themselves that it would take around 2 million subscribers to even, well, break even. By their analysis, this wouldn't happen until 1985 to 1986, but with over 1 million subscribers within the first year alone, they were well on track. In fact, within the first 2 years of operation, they'd obtained more subscriptions than any other service on cable TV. So by most accounts, the Disney Channel was an immediate success. However, this outward huzzah was covering up a major oversight that almost ended the channel forever. But to fully explain what was going on, it's time to bring into the story one of Disney's most controversial executives and a Yesterworld favorite, Michael DeMann Eisner. That's actually his middle name, I kid you not.
I have wanted to be involved with the Disney organization for all my life. I grew up, as most people in my generation did, on Walt Disney Entertainment.
You see, when Frank Wells and Michael DeMann Eisner were hired by the Mouse, Disney's new pay TV channel was thriving on the outside, but was also a ticking time bomb of potential failure. On the positive side of things was a deal made with Cablevision Systems Inc., one that was worth over $70 million. The person behind this incredibly lucrative deal was James Jamiro, who at this point was now president of the Disney Channel. Thanks to his efforts, the channel wound up passing the break-even point much earlier than expected, and was also on track to become profitable ahead of schedule. In fact, Michael Eisner and Frank Wells were so pleased with his efforts that James Jamiro was given a whopping $80,000 bonus, or almost $250,000 today. So, good news, right? Well, for some still unknown reason, there was a falling out, and James Jamiro resigned from Disney over, quote, superficial differences with Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. So he was ultimately replaced by John Cook, who among other things took over the responsibilities of running the Disney Channel.
If I could just say a little bit about when I came to Disney. When I came to Disney, I had a strong belief in pay television. That is, I thought it was a fabulous idea, and I still do.
Now, when John Cook took over for James Jamiro, part of his job was to inspect and review subscriber analytics for the Disney Channel, and this led to a troubling discovery. While the cancellation rate of most cable services was around 5% each month, it turned out the Disney Channel's was close to a panic-inducing 80% each month. So true, the channel did have 1.8 million subscribers, but it was only a matter of time before any additional growth would come to a screeching halt, or even worse, start losing more subscribers than it was gaining. Part of the problem was determined to be the channel's paltry $5 million budget for outside non-Disney programming. This led to the general practice of licensing cheaper-to-obtain shows, such as Steve Allen's Comedy Room, Steve Allen's Music Room, a talk show with Dr. Joyce Brothers, and The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin. But this was also the same case for their non-Disney movies, such as the acquisition of old Charlie Chaplin films, a 3-hour religious epic and box office dud called The Big Fisherman, and incredibly obscure TV movies like The Magic Statue. On top of this, there was also a severe lack of shows and movies to draw in teens and preteens, so the feeling by many was, yeah, it's squeaky clean content, but often boring as f***. So first, the budget for the acquisition of outside programming was tripled, with a focus on more hip and trendy content aimed at kids. There were shows like The Edison Twins, Huckleberry Finn, a non-Disney cartoon show called The Raccoons, The Care Bears, Kids Scene featuring the kids of Degrassi Street, and the fantasy series The Wind in the Willows. Disney also licensed a bunch of made-for-TV movies specifically targeting teens, and these were showcased within a weekly special called Jiminy Cricket Theater. Then, with a true twist of irony, there was the return of the once-cancelled Walt Disney Network anthology series, which was now exclusive to Disney's cable channel.
The Disney Channel proudly announces the return of television's longest-running and most honored series, The Wonderful World of Disney. Now you can share with your own family the wonder and experience of these legendary television presentations.
As an extra incentive to view this sort of new program, quite a few episodes that were originally broadcast in black and white were aired in color for the first time ever. Disney also began developing more shows based on their iconic characters, such as the unintentionally terrifying Dumbo Circus. As part of a cross-promotion strategy, there was also more integration of the Disney theme parks in general, such as the making of Captain EO and its eventual grand opening. Another example was Videopolis, which was both a live music dance club at the parks and a program block on the channel which featured all the hottest music videos. At least the super clean ones. However, one of the more drastic changes to the channel had to do with Disney's animated feature film canon. You see, up until this point, Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo were still the only titles aired on the channel. Or any network for that matter. This actually went all the way back to Walt Disney himself, as he made the decision to air these two films in the 50s. After his passing, the company basically decided that aside from these two animated films, no others would ever have a release outside of movie theaters. This was done to both preserve their legacy, and what they felt at the time, ensure their future profitability. Even with the introduction of Walt Disney Home Video in 1980, which was initially run by James DeMuro, Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo were the only titles allowed to be released. However, under the new direction of John Cook and with the full support of Michael Eisner, they were finally able to end this practice once and for all. So the Disney classics were at long last set to be released on home video, and more importantly to this story, the Disney Channel. But only after their home video release. It first began with the release of Robin Hood in December of 1984, as the next year it was aired on the Disney Channel, uncut and commercial-free. This was followed by other classics like The Sword in the Stone, Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella. Now, believe it or not, under this new direction there were even more changes made to the channel, such as going from a 16-hour-a-day schedule to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the final thing I'll mention before moving on was the revival of the Walt Disney Network anthology series with and by Michael Eisner. It was given a rebranding as the Disney Sunday Movie for ABC, and was yet another example of cross-promoting their pay TV service. All that said, before the end of the decade, the channel had grown to acquire more than 5 million subscribers and began to earn over $20 million a year, ensuring it wasn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Disney's the channel that brings you the laughter, the fun and adventure, magical times, fascinating, captivating, family fun for everyone. Disney Channel's yours and mine. Disney's our channel.
Now, in terms of the rest of the Disney Channel's history, there's still a lot, and I mean a lot more to cover. But first, let's take a look at some of the more unique programs of the early to mid-90s, as the Disney Channel had quite a bit to offer. Though it technically began in 1989, there was a revitalization of the Mickey Mouse Club, known as the all-new Mickey Mouse Club. But aside from an obvious overload of 90s wardrobe and set decor, one of the more interesting aspects was the inclusion of quite a few would-be future superstars. There was Britney Spears, Kerry Russell, Justin Timberlake, Ryan Gosling, JC Chazes, and Christina Aguilera, so whoever casted the show definitely deserved a raise. As far as purely fictional content, one of the more nostalgic and creative shows, not to mention the source of a ton of unintentional trippy nightmare fuel, was Adventures in Wonderland.
I'm glad that up there you think it's so funny, but it's maddening down here on the ground for this bunny.
Now, Kevin over at Defunctland already has a great deep dive on the show itself, so we won't get into much here. However, one of the more fascinating tidbits had to do with the so-called lost episode, one that even over 20 years later has yet to surface. It was an episode called White Rabbits Can't Jump, and featured at the time, and I stress at the time, beloved sports icon O.J. Simpson. The episode was filmed in late 1993 and was supposed to air the next year, but as you can probably guess, plans were scrapped when he was put on trial for, murder. To this day, the episode is yet to surface, and if Disney has their way, more than likely never will. Speaking of nightmare fuel, there was also the TV movie musical Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme, Which, and I'm not even kidding, I've gone like 20 years believing the memories I have of this to be some sort of fever dream I had as a kid. But after researching this episode, now I realize it was indeed real, which has me questioning so many things.
It looks like you fell off the wall and into the frying pan. But we just have to know, how do you get to outer space?
As far as shows that were able to avoid having you question your sanity, there was Flash Forward, which is often referred to as the first true Disney Channel original series. Also, by sheer coincidence, it was yet another early Disney show featuring the up-and-coming Ryan Gosling. Of course, this particular teen-centric format would eventually dominate and forever change the Disney Channel, but more on that soon. Though it technically began in the 80s, a major part of the Disney Channel's rise in the 90s were the channel's original animated series. However, contrary to popular belief, the first official series wasn't The Gummy Bears. This adorable show was made for NBC in 1985, but since it did appear on the channel a few years later, the confusion is understandable. The first official series to air on the Disney Channel was actually DuckTales, which made its debut in 1987. After this came Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, as well as Darkwing Duck, and in later years Goof Troop, Bonkers, and of course Gargoyles. Now, just to avoid confusion, all of these shows were also part of the incredibly popular Disney Afternoon, but this was just a repackaging of these shows for television networks and basic cable, although eventually the Disney Channel did introduce the Block Party, which was basically the same thing. Anyway, going back to the live-action side of things, there were also programs like Going Wild with Jeff Corwin, a game show called Mad Libs, another game show called Off the Wall, and Bug Juice. For Disney movie-philes like myself, there was also Movie Surfers, which took you behind the scenes of upcoming movies in between program blocks. Finally, there was the Magical World of Disney. This was a continuation of the Walt Disney Anthology series, but this time specifically made for the Disney Channel. It's a bit tedious, but as I said earlier, the series was revived in 1986 as the Disney Sunday movie for ABC, with Michael Eisner as the host. In 1988, this iteration ended and was reworked as the Magical World of Disney, and was switched over to NBC. But ironically, once again it failed to draw in viewers, and was once again cancelled by the network due to its lackluster ratings. So Disney simply brought the show over to the Disney Channel, and set the stage for the future rivalry between Disney and NBC. The format of the show was generally the same, in which Michael Eisner still served as the host and showcased a wide variety of Disney films and specials. However, now that it was on Disney's pay TV service, the entire show and its feature presentations were shown commercial-free. And if you're like me, even hearing a snippet of the intro brings back a ton of memories. Now, as far as the channel's promos and bumpers, which, come on, are just as, if not more nostalgic than the shows themselves, the vast majority of the ones in the 80s were animated segues featuring Mickey's hand from his point of view. However, in the 90s, they soon began to shift into live-action shorts. Most of them were still from Mickey Mouse's point of view, and usually involved some sort of quick sketch or skit. Some even harken back to shows from the channel's early days, like the Disney-centric exercise program Mousercise. The one I personally remember the most was Mickey going through a supermarket for a Mickey-shaped TV dinner. Once in a while, there were even from Donald Duck's perspective, and though I wasn't able to find any examples, I could have sworn there were a few from Goofy as well. Or am I just crazy? Tell me in the comments if Mother Goose Rockin' Rhyme just scrambled my brains.
You know, when I was a kid, my father ran off with a goat.
Shut up, Lou.
Anyway, getting back to the history side of things, the next major shift in the channel's evolution took place in the middle to late 90s. But to fully understand why they were made and what led to the changes, we have to briefly discuss the channel's subscriber base. Like I said earlier, by 1990, the Disney Channel as a pay TV service had grown to over 5 million subscribers. However, a short time later, Disney quietly began to allow certain cable providers to offer the channel as part of an expanded basic cable package. This had a huge impact on the channel's subscriber base, in the form of an additional 25 million subscribers by 1997, or 30 million in total. But, and this is a big but, as far as those paying for the channel as a standalone service like HBO, this number had grown from 5 million subscribers to just 5.1 million. So with virtually no growth as a premium pay TV service, it was just a matter of when, not if, the channel would transition to basic cable. In the meantime, however, a massive rebranding took place to pave the road for this inevitable change.
Hi, my name is Natasha, that's Jesse, that's Janet, that's Michael.
I'm Jim, this is Margie and Hannah, and this is Angus. Families come together.
After nearly 15 years of use, the Disney Channel's iconic symbol was abandoned and received a much more modern makeover. The channel's new icon was a TV set with Mickey ears, and featured the famous mouse himself at the center. There were also a ton of new bumpers and ad breaks, most of which were variations of the channel's new symbol featuring other iconic Disney characters. But with these changes to the channel's overall tone came a major and drastic shift in its content. You see, when the channel began to focus on specific demographics within families, even through the 80s and most of the 90s, it was still under the umbrella of the Disney Channel. And nothing else. In other words, there was the Disney Channel's morning programming for kids, the Disney Channel's afternoon programming for slightly older kids, the Disney Channel's evening programming for the entire family, and the Disney Channel's nighttime programming for adults. So there wasn't any sort of official category to put the shows under. The one exception was the previously mentioned Block Party, but that was about it. However, within a year of the rebranding, this was no longer the case, as the channel's content was now exclusively tied to 3 unique and individually named program blocks. The first was Playhouse Disney, and though its primary demographic was content for preschoolers, most of the programs could be enjoyed by older kids too. And by older kids, I mean like me when I was 13 years old. A few examples were shows like Bear in the Big Blue House, Roly Poly Oly, Out of the Box, and PB&J Otter. The second program block that was intentionally aimed at teens and preteens was Zoog Disney, and was hosted by robot alien hybrids known as Zoogs. But this one was especially unique, as it utilized a revolutionary form of technology: the internet.
So watch Zoog Disney Sundays, then go to www.zoogdisney.com all week. But then tune in Saturday when you'll see stuff kids did online, back on TV, like chats, scores, and messages. See you in the Ether.
Interactivity aside, Zoog Disney also featured a wide variety of music videos from new hit artists, such as NSYNC and Britney Spears. It was also the home for the presentation of Disney's feature films, both live action and animated. For the fans of Disney's theme parks, there was also Imagineer That, a new show featuring interviews with Imagineers, and also went behind the scenes of new attractions and rides. Zoog Disney was also home to the channel's original series I mentioned earlier, with new additions such as So Weird, The Famous Jet Jackson, and The Jersey. So with Playhouse Disney for kids and Zoog Disney for teens, the final brand new television block was Vault Disney, and this was for adult viewers and older subscribers. The series aired at night and was home to Disney's classic content, or basically the shows that used to be the main draw of the channel in its early days. But aside from these 3 very specific program blocks, there was also the channel's regular weekday content.
Starting today, guess who's coming to Disney on Growing Pains?
It's Leonardo DiCaprio!
That's right, that lovable leading man from that Big Boat movie.
Oh, Leo!
These non-Disney shows were also heavily aimed at teens and pretty edgy, at least for Disney in the 1990s. Also, for the record, most of these came from Disney's acquisition of ABC, although a few had seasons produced by Disney themselves. Another new addition to the channel's lineup were the shows Muppets Tonight and Dinosaur, and for a lot of younger viewers like myself, this was their first real exposure to the television side of Jim Henson's creations.
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here, and I see you found our Behind the Ears preview, where we're getting ready for new episodes of Muppets Tonight.
Hey, Kermit, look.
Excuse me. What is it, Gonzo? It's Harold the Mummy, star of Under Wraps. Oh, sure, that's the brand new Disney Channel original movie. How's it going there, Harold?
When it came to the Disney Channel's movie content, this massive rebranding saw the first Disney Channel original movie, with Under Wraps. However, it's important to stress that this wasn't Disney's first TV movie, as remember, that distinction belongs to the 1983 Disney Channel premiere film Tigertown. This was followed by a wide variety of other Disney Channel premiere films, most of which were produced by Disney themselves, with a handful of titles simply licensed by Disney. The main difference between these premiere films and the rebranded Disney Channel original movies was the demographic, as while the others were made for the entire family, these were specifically made for teens and preteens. You seeing a common theme here? Under Wraps was then followed by You Lucky Dog, Brink, Halloween Town, Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, Can of Worms, The 13th Year, Smart House, Johnny Tsunami, Genius, Don't Look Under the Bed, and Horse Sense, just to name a few. Now, if you're wondering where Disney's animated content fits into all this, well, it didn't. You see, a short time after all these modifications to the Disney Channel, Disney officially debuted Toon Disney, a sort of spin-off of the Disney Channel. This was now the new home for the Disney afternoon cartoons and virtually all things iconic Disney characters, 24 hours a day and exclusively on cable. In other words, it was more or less a way to move Disney's animated content off the Disney Channel, which was a pretty big deal since it was once the channel's main selling point to subscribers. The final major change of the 1990s took place in 1998, and once again the subscriber base was the instigator. You see, the channel was now at a whopping 41 million subscribers, but as far as those paying for it as a premium cable channel, the number was now under 5 million, or barely over 10% of its total subscribers. So Disney pulled the trigger, so to speak, and finally abandoned the Disney Channel as a paid TV service, officially becoming a basic cable channel that December. Practically overnight, this sent the Disney Channel's 40+ million subscribers to upwards of 70 million subscribers. So although it did mean losing the revenue of those who'd pay for the channel on its own, it meant nearly double the viewers to promote the Disney brand. From new movies going into theaters, the Disney theme parks, upcoming attractions, merchandise at the Disney Store, and much, much more. Much like the late 90s to early 2000s, the mid-2000s also saw drastic changes to the Disney Channel. First was another major rebranding, and by rebranding I mean erasing all traces of the iconic Disney characters from the channel's logos and bumpers. Eventually, most of the content aimed at teens and preteens during the week fell into Zoog Disney on the weekends, otherwise known as Zoog Weekends. There was also the addition of new shows like Even Stevens and the insanely popular Lizzie McGuire. The success of these two shows was incredible, and was basically the nail in the coffin for the channel's original purpose as television content for the entire family. Part of what led to this was yet another major rebranding, with the various logos and bumpers having a more computerized appearance. Oh, and the Disney Channel was now simplified to just Disney Channel. The stars of Disney's teen-centric shows and original movies also became more than just actors, but the face of the channel itself. Then there was getting rid of Zoog Disney in 2002, and just made this content part of the channel's regular weekday and weekend offerings. However, by far the most controversial change was the cancellation of Walt Disney, which meant for the first time in the channel's 20-year history, there was absolutely zero content for adults. It probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really was, and many subscribers were angry about losing the only real classic Disney content on, the Disney Channel, so it was seen as a cruel joke of sorts, but not nearly as bad as the jokes in Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme.
This is great!
It's breathtaking!
That's because there's no air up here.
Regardless of the bad news for older subscribers, with this came an avalanche of new shows such as That's So Raven, Phil of the Future, and The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Of course, there was also the original animated series Kim Possible and The Proud Family. But aside from the general demographic of kids, if you notice that most of these offerings were geared towards a female audience, you are not alone. From what I gathered, this was initially unintentional, and just kind of happened, but once Disney realized their content was attracting mostly female viewers, they really leaned into it. So to account for this shift, the spin-off channel Toon Disney was given a program block called Jetix. This aimed to appeal and attract male viewers, with new shows such as The Emperor's New School, The Legend of Tarzan, and Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. And yes, I realize that Jetix was also part of Fox Kids, and that ABC had its own Disney programming outside of the Disney Channel. But honestly, it gets incredibly tedious, so we're just focusing on the Disney Channel's history. Anyway, with the Disney Channel now focused on female-driven content, the mid-2000s saw yet another new initiative. This one was to establish synergy between the Disney Channel's music video offerings and their hit TV shows. The reason for this was due to, what else? Money, as Disney wasn't able to obtain revenue from CD sales, concert tickets, or merchandise of the bands they were promoting. So Disney formed Walt Disney Records, and utilized their in-house label Hollywood Records. This led to an absolute cash-filled bonanza of music-based Disney Channel movies and TV shows, most of which still aimed at female viewers. There was Camp Rock, High School Musical, and TV shows like Austin and Ally, along with the incredibly popular Hannah Montana. And while the show wasn't music-centric, there was also The Wizards of Waverly Place, which starred pop sensation Selena Gomez, who ironically first appeared on Disney as a fictional pop star for the show Hannah Montana. Another change worth mentioning was the rebranding and merging of Toon Disney and Jetix, officially becoming Disney XD. Along with the previously mentioned shows, two major additions were Phineas and Ferb and Gravity Falls, both of which proved to be huge hits. Now, as convoluted as these changes were, it really did pay off, as in 2012, the Disney Channel officially beat out Nickelodeon as the highest-rated basic cable channel in the US. By this point, there had also been quite a few additional Disney Channel original movies, so just to name a few to appease the "you forgot to talk about X crowd," there was Up, Up, and Away, The Color of Friendship, Alley Cat Strike, Rip Girls, Miracle in Lane 2, Stepsister from Planet Weird, Ready to Run, Quince, The Other Me, Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire, Phantom of the Megaplex, The Ultimate Christmas Present, Xenon the Sequel, Motocrossed, The Luck of the Irish, Hounded, Jet Jackson the Movie, The Jenny Project, Jumping Ship, The Proof Point, Halloween Town 2 Calabar's Revenge, 'Twas the Night, Double Teamed, Cadet Kelly, True Confessions, Get a Clue, Gotta Kick It Up, A Ring of Endless Light, The Scream Team, You Wish, Ride on Track, The Even Stevens Movie, Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off, The Cheetah Girls, Full Court Miracle, Pixel Perfect, Going to the Mat, Xenon Z3, Stuck in the Suburbs, Tiger Cruise, Halloween Town High, Now You See It, Buffalo Dreams, Kim Possible the Movie So the Drama, Go Figure, Life is Rough, which, by the way, has the most rage-inducing opening of a Disney movie ever. First is the issue of a bunch of parents taking their kids on a trip to the convenience store and being like, sure, grab that free puppy while we're here. It's not like it's a serious commitment or life-changing decision or anything. Then there's the blatantly obvious continuity error, as the box is clearly shown to have 2 more black puppies left. Then another is taken, leaving 1 left. Then the final puppy is taken. But Disney thinks we lack the ability to count because another magically appears. It's also just incredibly depressing. No one returns to see if all the puppies found a home, the store owner leaves the last one for dead, and ultimately the yellow lab is forced to escape after almost drowning in a cardboard box and runs off into the dark streets in the pouring rain. F you, Disney. The world is dark enough without this shit. The Proud Family Movie, Twitches, High School Musical, Cowbells, Wendy Wu Homecoming Warrior, Read It and Weep, Cheetah Girls 2, Return to Halloween Town, Jump In, Johnny Capalla Back on Board, High School Musical 2, Twitches 2, Minutemen, Camp Rock, Cheetah Girls One World, Dadnapped, Hatching Pete, Princess Protection Program, Wizards of Waverly Place the Movie, Starstruck, Den Brother, Camp Rock 2 The Final Jam, Avalon High, The Sweet Life Movie, Lemonade Mouth, Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure, Phineas and Ferb the Movie Across the Second Dimension, Geek Charming, Good Luck Charlie It's Christmas, Frenemies, Radio Rebel, Let It Shine, Girl vs. Monster, Teen Beach Movie, Cloud 9, Zapped, How to Build a Better Boy, Bad Hair Day, Teen Beach 2, Descendants, Invisible Sister, Adventures in Babysitting, The Swap, Tangled Before Ever After, Descendants 2, Zombies, Freaky Friday, not the Lindsay Lohan one, Kim Possible, the live-action one, Descendants 3, Zombies 2, Upside Down Magic, Spin, Under Wraps, the reboot, Christmas Again, Zombies 3 We're Running Out of Ideas, and for the sake of future-proofing, Under Wraps 2. Again, just to name a few. Now to be totally honest, the rest of the Disney Channel's history is, well, uneventful. I mean, sure, there were plenty of additional shows like Ant Farm, and a revival of DuckTales on Disney XD, as well as a few changes to the logos. But in my opinion, the most interesting change came with the launch of Disney+, as Disney's cable channel lost over 30% of its viewers and subscribers. Since then, Disney has shut down a number of Disney channels and Disney XD channels all around the world. So with this in mind, it really does seem like Disney's future television content is heading for sole distribution on Disney+, and away from cable entirely. Now I find that incredibly ironic, because Disney Plus is essentially what the Disney Channel used to be, a standalone service with a monthly fee. So here's to a new generation who will grow up with Disney Plus in the same way we grew up with the Disney Channel. But as far as having the same level of nostalgia, we'll have to wait and see.